Well, good morning, everybody. Here's my plan for the forecast video this Monday morning. We're going to talk about the cutoff load that's currently spinning over Colorado and how we do expect it to eject but get absorbed into the flow and become quite weak and starved of moisture as it spreads off to the east. After that, we're going to be looking at the next 7 days, which continues on a bit of a drier time period for much of the United States. But we did start to pick up on this hint of a different pattern at the end of the month. It is still there in the models, and we'll talk about what that means for the month of November. Of course, we'll pick up quickly on the tropical system, which isn't a threat right now to mainland United States, but we'll take a look at it. And we'll also stretch this out, I think, as far as we can again. But I want to remind you, the video I produced on Friday, that's my latest thoughts on fall and winter. And I don't have anything additional to add to that. I still feel pretty good about it after the weekend. So if you want to go watch the video I produced on Friday, that's where you'll find my latest information. Okay, we'll finish it up with South America. So here we go. Let's watch this again as this starts to play. I'm going to pause it right here just to show you how cut off this is. So the main flow is way up here, and this is just sitting and spinning. And over the weekend, it produced a lot of precipitation as it sat here. Now, the issue with this is that it was having to draw the moisture first through parts of western Texas, which is just climatologically a dry place. So this was not able to really do much more in terms of make more rainfall than it did across a wider area because of that limited pull on the moisture. But take a look at this. Over the last 72 hours, we've seen some very heavy precipitation in and around New Mexico and southern Colorado. Some of it did get into the panhandles. Remember, we kind of talked last week about that tendril of vorticity that was going to be out ahead of this. You can see some of the lift and the very light precipitation that we had on that, maybe enough just to settle some of the dust in these areas. And then as you look back into the very northwest corner of the United States, this is where we had better flow just continuing to hit this area. Big baroclinic leaf reached its way into this area, delivering quite a bit of rainfall. If we zoom in just a little closer here, though, I want to show you that some of the rainfall totals as estimated by NOAA's MRMS data here, we've got some places 3, 4, 5 inches of rain. And that's a tremendous amount from one system in this area, which is really desert, high desert kind of area here from this cutoff low. So it is on its way out, moving, spreading better precipitation chances east today. It's not a drought breaker east here, but it is certainly a chance for some moisture. I did want to show you the latest snow totals. So I've got these maps updating on agweather.com. If you go to the historical weather tab, you can see the season-to-date snowfall, anomalies, departures, anything you want there. It just kind of shows us where we've had some snow so far. And this is, I make these maps every morning about 9 a.m. And so this is through Sunday morning. And again, we've got some places down here that already have their first foot to 2 feet of snow in parts of the central and southern Rockies. So just wanted to keep you up to speed on these numbers here. It's kind of nice to see the all hazards weather map early this morning. Not really showing too much of anything, right? We've got some area where we got some wind concern, weather advisory here on the backside, the frost or the freeze watch. But outside of that, pretty benign map overall. So we're going to leave this map and head a little bit farther to the south and east. And just to show you, if you remember on Friday, the National Hurricane Center had lowered the chances of development of this system to 10%. And so we knew, pretty confidently all week last week that this had no chance at getting into the U.S. mainland. So I downplayed it. I apologize, but in most of my videos, I don't do a lot of Caribbean forecasting for the Bahamas or Jamaica or Cuba here. But it did end up getting named. This is named Oscar, Category 1 hurricane. It's now been downgraded to a tropical storm, and it's expected to move out into open ocean well away from the United States. And part of that is due to the upper level flow that we've got right now. There's the cutoff low. There's the main pieces of the jet stream just rolling pretty far to the north right now. And there was just overall coming out of the southeast winds that were from the north and northwest that would have been pushing. Oscar had a bit more of a push over toward the west, would have kept it away from the U.S. So what I want to talk to you about, though, is as we look out into the future of this pattern, I've looked at all the models, and they're all kind of advertising something similar as we approach the end of this month. Until we get there, we still have another week of kind of what we've been having. So we'll recap that, and then we will, we'll try to figure out what this change might look like. And I'm going to use the AI European model to kind of give us an idea on the heights here. But I've looked at all, and they all have a similar outlook. So here's the cutoff low early this morning, getting absorbed back into the flow. We then watch the atmosphere do it again. But this time way over here, just leaving a low lingering. There's a weak system that moves into the northwest Tuesday. into Wednesday. Then it's gone. So we start to rebuild some ridging in the west while the momentum in the pattern, the depths of troughs begin to develop here. And that's what I'm curious about. By this Friday, October 25th, where's that trough going to go? Because we've watched the models, week after week try to go toward more high amplitude in the middle and end of their run. And sometimes that's an artifact of the model, and sometimes it's an actual signal. And here we are now, not in the middle of a run, but in the beginning of it. And by this Saturday, this is pretty high amplitude. So major warm-up in the midsection of the United States. Deep trough enters the northwest, and it seems to, as we go to Tuesday the 29th, Wednesday the 30th, and then Thursday, Halloween, we've now got quite a bit of amplitude in this pattern. It's actually two pieces to the trough in the artificial intelligence and a big ridge out east. So if you remember last week, I said, hey, way out there at the 300 and some odd hour forecast, there was this deep trough over the Great Lakes. I said, hey, none of the other models have it there, but we'll watch. The European artificial intelligence, has started to slide this thing, or slow it down, I should say, having it arrive in the western United States as we work our way into the afternoon on Halloween. So this one is interesting. This has got, it'll have moisture with it, and it's good lift. This trough coming through here, plus the ones over California. If it was winter, this is the type of setup where we often swing one around the base, creating a nice, low that comes out of New Mexico and Texas and rips across parts of the Ohio Valley. Now let's see if it does that. No. See this? In winter it would. I know in winter it would grab that. But in fall they split up, and we leave a lingering low here, according to the model, while the broader trough leaves the Great Lakes. And so this is going to make the very end of this month a bit more active. And we just need to get out there and look and see what that's going to do. So let's walk through it piecewise here. First of all, today, we have our upper level low that's leaving. And as a result, we've got a pretty broad area. And through here, we have the risk of some stronger thunderstorms. They've got a marginal risk out from Nebraska all the way down through the start of the Red River Valley of the south. If you look at this a bit on radar here, this is a simulated radar animation going through the rest of the day today. You see the storms isolated, but coming out into parts of Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, probably stretching down here into this part of Texas. Meanwhile, there'll be some snow on the northern side of this, but we have some moisture that's coming in with that next trough that hits the northwest and just pushes across this region, delivering some, it's not super widespread, but there is moisture in this through this afternoon and this evening into tonight that's going to spread, again, from parts of Washington, Oregon, through Idaho, up into Montana, and then eventually on Tuesday into parts of North Dakota. What'll also be interesting to watch is the cutoff low as it moves toward parts of Missouri and Iowa, out of Nebraska and Kansas. And can we get more storms, depending on the timing of this, coming across eastern Iowa, eastern Missouri into Illinois? Again, these are extremely dry regions right now, so to see any moisture at all, even if it's just enough to settle the dust, would be quite important for this region. So playing this out there to Wednesday, and after that, that not a whole lot else going on here. In fact, if you look at our kind of 5 model spread over the next 7 days, you can kind of still see a very similar pattern to what we had been looking at. The European model and the AI, you can see a little bit better precip in through this area, but I want to go ahead and show you the WPC. I tend to, let's just open the image here. I tend to like the WPC's forecasts when we're just looking over the next 7 days. I think it's a really well-generated, blended product. It's not perfect, but none of them are. So that's it. That's the 7-day outlook from the WPC. And so what we're waiting on here is something to shift things up getting into next week. So let's go and have a look at the high-res European to see when this might happen. We've already had a good look at these next 3 days. So there it is in the European. Now watch Wednesday, moisture moving into the northeast, while more snow is coming down in parts of the northwest here by Thursday into Idaho. Now that system, it's weak, but there's a wave that leaves Idaho and makes it to parts of the Midwest. And it could get there by Friday. Now I'm just going to tell you something. When I made these maps, I purposefully exaggerated the greens. And I'm telling you that because I wanted to be able just to see where the model put down anything. When you're looking for the heavy rains, substantial, you got to be looking for this color here. Okay? So there's a frontal boundary sneaking through on Friday. It's it's Thursday night and Friday morning. And the models do have this coming through, and it's increasing these chances for precipitation. There is going to be moisture with it because there's a high pressure over the east that's going to be pumping in this moisture from the south. But it kind of fizzles a bit. See that? Let's just watch it again. The wave is here on Thursday. Friday, sweeping through the Midwest. By Saturday, it's over the Northeast. It's beyond that I think things get interesting. Ready? So this is now, the week of Halloween. So Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. Now, what did we see? High pressure built back in here, opened things up. We had a wave, a much deeper one that came into the west. We start to see low pressure forming in this area, and it might actually have some moisture to work with. So you can see as I rock back and forth between next Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we finally see the Gulf of Mexico recovering, but it's at the end of this forecast. So thinking that through, the next 7 days looks something like this. When you add on the following 3 days to get it out to 10-day, we now start to see more activity in the midsection of the country, in the Northwest. California, the southern tier of the U.S., the southeast and up the East Coast, relatively dry in this pattern. In fact, another way to look at it would just be to look at the probabilities. So this probability map shows you the regions that we expect to stay under a half inch in the next 10 days. So where this has changed the most is here. All right, we've stayed very dry there, very dry in the southwest. No early, subtropical jet activity coming into the southwest. And even throughout the western and high plains, getting up to the Canadian prairie, very dry. And this is going to be a ribbon of snow right in through here. If we look for those areas that are wet, how about we just go greater than a half inch? Should have got a new model run in. Yep, we did. Once daylight saving time ends, which will be, when is that, November 3rd? Yeah. Then we won't have that model flip problem because I'll be another hour earlier compared to when the models are released. But anyway, sorry. This is our chance of getting over a half inch. And now we can start to see this improving in an area that's extremely dry. So we're going to watch that carefully. Now, as you noted, toward Halloween and beyond, we start to see more western U.S. troughs. And that's why the models out there day 8 through 14 are beginning to pick up on a pattern that's more open and moving, full of more amplitude, but sending the waves to the east. In other words, it's progressive. It's not slowing down or going backward with time. Long waves tend to do that. And while the AI is the most aggressive in the center part of the United States, let's go and have a look at the European ensemble day 8 through 14. Now, just as a reminder, this is not going to be able to bust this longer-term drought. But this is the pattern shift we started to see in the month of November, and now some of the short-term models are picking up on it as well. Why this is so critical, it just comes back to the same sequence of maps we've been looking at for a while. This is your 16-inch or 40-centimeter soil moisture percentile showing lowest 2% in the historical database across broad areas, and even these areas over here in the Northeast as well, including the entire state of New Jersey and Delaware, most of Maryland and eastern side of Pennsylvania. To show you the month-to-date precip statistics, there's a lot of areas in through here that, since these records began in 1893, are having a top 5 in some places. Well, anywhere you see the number 132, it is the new driest October on record. So could the end of the month offset this? Possibly. But overall, it's such a long duration dry time period from late summer now through mid-fall that it's going to be hard to undo this drought going forward. The Mississippi River is back down to where it was. We're almost 9 feet below low stage again. So Helene was able to jump it up, but it's right back down here once again. And if we flip this over to a temperature discussion, this is really where the story's been written. There's been so much heat and ridging in this area of the country that the flow's gone over the top of it. We've had troughs that have kind of dropped fronts into the southeast in this month of October, but they've been starved of moisture. So when your flow is coming around like this, that's the wrong direction. You say, well, what does it take to get things really going wet? You've got to have this. You've got to have troughs coming in, and they have to make a hard turn and run up. That's what opens the Gulf of Mexico up for moisture transport. That's what gets these big systems invigorated. And that's what we think we might see by the end of the month. That's the long story short there. But these are your temperature ranks so far for the month of October. A lot of ones on this, indicating extreme heat in the southwestern United States, especially in the state of Arizona, where we've seen, I think, new records being set for how hot it's been so long. All right, in terms of frost map, nothing surprising here at all. In fact, we're going to see some pretty warm temperatures over the next several days. Here's today's highs. I mean, this is like summer-like temperatures here in the upper Midwest around the Great Lakes. We then go forward into Tuesday, major warm-up for the midsection of the country. Wednesday, this is Thursday's temperatures. Front sneaks into the parts of the eastern United States through the eastern Great Lakes. But Friday into Saturday, Sunday, overall, this is a mild pattern. And that's why you can look at the next 5 days, and we're looking for these sources of colder air, and they don't really start to show up until you get to the day 5 through 10, and really out there day 10 through 15. Now, what's interesting about this is this day 10 through 15 map has looked something like this for a while. But it's only now the day 10 through 15. When I showed it to you last week, it would have been like day 15 through 20, and I don't have that map. So what's interesting is the models have prolonged the warmth across the United States, resisting this pattern breakdown, not even really getting it going until the end of the month. But I'll be honest, if we get into something like this at the end of the month, this is going to be a strong signal for getting that flow I just drew for you. Because where does the flow go? It goes between the epicenters of heat. There'll be ridging here, there'll be troughs there, and as a result, we'll have a much more active pattern starting in the west, specifically the northwest, and then diving in through the Rocky Mountains and ejecting in the plains. So if there's a drier signal in all of this, I know you're looking at a temperature map, but longer term, it's going to be here. So what's changing? Well, for a while there, most of this late summer into early fall, it was all about the WPO, right? I beat it to death. It was all the low pressure forming here coming into the Gulf of Alaska. Well, now we've got something new to look at. The MJO has made a huge move, and it's at high amplitude. So if you're unfamiliar with this graphic, just remember, these are phases, 1 through 8. This is called null space when there's not a strong signal. And the farther you get away from the middle of this diagram, the more pronounced the signal is. So we can look at it several different, let's not go there. I'll go here and explain it real quick. What we're watching for is phase 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 is about right here. Okay, and then there's another reflective phase 1 there. So we're just looking across this part of the Indian and Pacific Ocean for really rising motion, air that is ascending. At the same time that that's going on, I think this shift around in the MJO is being complemented by these episodes of negative, what we call Pacific North American oscillation. And all that is this is a West Coast trough, then a big West Coast ridge, and then a West Coast trough, West Coast ridge. See how that's happening? The pattern is showing some regularity to it, not staying stuck. And I think you can give the credit to the big move in the tropical Indian Ocean, tropical Pacific with the MJO to get this thing moving around. And that's why I imagine that the National Weather Service, the Climate Prediction Center, doesn't feel too confident, especially on their forecast for the precipitation for the middle, from November 2nd to November 15th. So really the front half of November. I imagine they have this right, but I'm not sure about the rest of the country. And the reason for that is I think we're going to have a much more active pattern in the month to really get things going. I do think this is right. Okay, more warm days than cool. But November is going to be tricky to figure out the temperatures. But we've been watching the November forecast in the European model for several weeks now. And this is the newest one. That's the November precipitation anomalies. And the only way you can get this is if we have better flow coming into the west and turning. That's what it takes. It takes ridging over the south and southeast to open the Gulf, get systems to invigorate, lift air, and make that happen. And what's interesting about this is it's kind of being complemented, if we come back to that ocean temperature pattern, by what's going on with La Nina, trying to make a bit of a go of it here. But I really think so much of this pattern is being written by this contrast right here between this epicenter of warmth and the cooler water that is now developed here after weeks of that WPO signal we talked about. I think it's just starting to manifest itself in a better chance of a more active, more momentum-filled jet stream pattern that's going to enter the United States later this month. I'm going to be very clear. My exuberance about it, this still doesn't bust the drought. It's moisture, but it's not going to bust this drought up. So I want to make sure we're clear on how that's going to work. I'm going to spend some more time this week thinking about this because I think this is a massive signal that we cannot miss the analysis of in favor of trying to think more about what's going on with La Nina. One other thing to talk about. We do have, as we get toward the end of this month, some increased concern about, I think, the tropics getting going again. What I'm thinking about here is this. When you look at the MJO progression, so this is it sweeping out into phase 8. See it right there? So there's the numbers. I should just showed you this. So this is the MJO sweep out to phase 8. You go, what is that? That's rising motion in the atmosphere. So I'm looking at a time versus, area map. And what happens is we get out there later in the season, later in the month, in the beginning of November here, there seems to be some rising motion coming back to the Caribbean, Gulf of Mexico, Western Atlantic. And that is why we're looking at the models going, all right, if we're starting to see something in here, because this is just Oscar, but if we're starting to see something in here, could we have one of those surprise, very late October, early November systems that has a chance at the U.S.? And so I just want to let you know I'm going to be watching it, okay? All right, to finish this up, I want to give you a quick global perspective on precipitation. Take note of why the MJO is moving. See all of this here? There's actually 2 typhoons over here. There's some activity in the Bay of Bengal. There's a lot of convection happening. That's why the MJO is sliding in this direction. Outside of that, there is some moisture coming into Ukraine, this part of Western Russia. We see a lot of the interior of Asia looking wetter for this time of year, southern parts of Europe. But a lot of us are going to be focusing a lot on South America, which over the last 30 days, if you look at the total precip, they began to fill in some of the areas that were so exceptionally dry. And we kind of monitored that over the last several weeks. This has allowed for more rapid planting pace. And what's happened is that even though we're off by, 35% where we were a year ago, okay, the slope of this line is matching where we've been, meaning the pace is right, but the early season lack of planting is what's causing the big difference here. My guess is we're going to continue on this trajectory, maybe with this slope going forward, given that this is what the moisture looks like. So that that graphic was only valid for Mato Grosso, this big producing state here. We do see drier conditions coming into an area that's been wet. I'm thinking Paraguay and southern Brazil. Argentina in the European model showing up wetter. Drier signal coming back to the Amazon and the Northeast. But as we look out there, again, I don't think it'd be any surprise to see this as the new November forecast from the European model. I can just draw it again. There's the wetter signal. We have drier on either side. And as this La Nina continues to build, I think we're going to see more of a pattern like this going into, through November into December and January as well. So I'll leave it at that and just tell you thank you for watching again, and I'll talk to you again in the morning. Thanks.